the foods that you're eating that are sugary and processed, they don't contain any fiber. They don't contain anything that signals to your body that you are now full. And so even though you may have just eaten a packet of donuts, you're going to feel starving. You're not going to feel satisfied because that is not what your body wanted.
Hello and welcome to Sweet Liberation. We are so excited about today's episode, aren't we, Luke?
Yeah, super excited.
We've taken a business break away, which I think is really important. And this is one of the things we'll be covering in today's topic. But we've got one of our favourite contributors on today's episode. Georgia Lennard, we love her, don't we?
We do.
We absolutely adore her. And she is incredible at explaining things and putting them into really simple terms for us to be able to understand the consequences that sugar plays on our body and why it's not an ingredient to be taken lightly or to be dismissed as something that isn't having an impact on our health. But we wanted to talk about something a little bit deeper as well as an introduction to this.
Taking a bit of a holistic view on your sort of healthcare and actually looking at things in a multifaceted way.
Exactly.
It's not just about the food, is it?
Exactly. Well, although we know that sugar plays a really big part in people's, health and is having excessive sugar consumption is having a massive consequence on global health. We also want to acknowledge the importance of people's emotional health as well as part of their well-being and achieving, an ideal and happy life. This is something we're really passionate about, isn't it?
And even as we've done, taking a break as well, and that's all part of wellness, right?
It is part of wellness. It's an important part of wellness, and it's an important part of finding regulation in life. Yeah. And I think a lot of people use sugar as a way to reset themselves and emotionally regulate. Isn't it? Sweets play a part in that.
They do indeed, and also things like meal planning.
Meal planning. Yeah, we were just discussing how some people are, because of their, they are actually in a state of maybe dysregulation. They might actually be planning their day around what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, what's for dinner. And we were just asking the question of what is the role of food in helping people to regulate themselves. And so this is something that we will be exploring more in the Sweet Liberation, aren't we?
Exactly. And we were talking about it and saying there is a level of anxiety, isn't there, about thinking about when are we going to eat next?
Exactly.
We don't generally have problems, do we, around, food and meal times, but of course people are being led by that slightly.
That's right. And I think deeper at the core of that is regulating and dysregulation of our emotional state, managing our emotional state. But we are really excited about today's episode because, as I said, we have one of our favourite contributors to Sweet Liberation, Georgia Lennard, and without further ado, we'd love to present her to you, and she's going to be discussing with us today the impact of sugar as an ingredient in our food choices. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode. And with that said, over to Georgia. And I am joined today by the lovely Georgia Lennard. Hello, Georgia.
Hi.
Hi, Georgia. Hi. I'm so happy to have you. And Georgia Lennard is a registered nutritional therapist who specializes in thyroid and gut health. And really today's session, we are kicking off with the trouble with sugar. So, Georgia, thank you so much for joining us today. And we really wanted to kick off this session just to kind of get some insights from your professional expertise, as you know you're really passionate about this area, about the trouble with sugar and why it is really causing so much havoc to our health in our everyday use. So over to you, Georgia.
Oh, yeah. So I think there's 5 main areas to really be aware of. And I don't like to kind of demonize food, but I think empowering people with the actual knowledge of what is happening when they do consume a certain food then gives them the best opportunity to make the right choices for them. So I think, if I break it down into 5 main points of why sugar is a problem, the first one would be that it encourages the growth of pathogenic gut bacteria. So it encourages what we would call bad bacteria or pathogenic bacteria, which are non-desirable bacteria that can cause problems to human health. So an example of that would be Candida, which a lot of people are aware of that one. It can cause things like thrush, which can be, in the vagina, in the mouth. But it can also cause lots of other symptoms where it's not obvious that it is a pathogenic bacteria that's been allowed to overgrow. So it can be bloating, it can be tiredness, it can be joint pain, it can be mental health problems. And then the list really does go on. It depends how it presents in that person. But that is one of the main problems, is that it causes an imbalance in your gut bacteria, because what it does is it feeds the pathogenic bacteria, which then grow, sometimes quite out of control. It's sort of then an overgrowth, and that then crowds out the more beneficial bacteria that we actually need and depend on for human health. And that is a state of gut dysbiosis. That just means bacterial imbalance in the gut. But from that, many problems can come. So once you've got gut dysbiosis, then you're looking at impacts on your brain health because of the gut-brain axis, which is, proven that our gut and our brain are in constant interaction, constant communication. So, from gut dysbiosis, a lot of things can happen and can go wrong in terms of brain health, mental health, sleep, behavior, digestion, eating habits. And it's not always obvious. It's not like you eat the sugar and you immediately feel that way. It's a cumulative process. And by the time you have fed those bacteria enough sugar that it's become an overgrowth, because that is their preferred fuel source is sugar, then, it's not going to be very obvious that it was the sugar over X amount of time that eventually led to that pathogenic overgrowth and that gut dysbiosis. So that is the number one thing. And then the second thing would be blood sugar balance. So when we eat refined sugar, we do get, roller coasters in our blood sugar balance. So we get, let's say we eat a muffin and our blood sugar goes way up high. Oh, wow, I've lost of energy. And then it crashes down again. Now, and then, of course, you feel like you need another sugary thing again straight away because you're desperately exhausted. And what that does is it signals to your body as a threat. Your body doesn't feel safe in that environment where you are constantly, nothing is constant. It's all roller coaster. Nothing is level. And your body will elicit a stress response. So it will push quite hard on your adrenal gland, and then you'll be producing cortisol and adrenaline because that's not a normal state to be going up and down like that. And what that does, the blood sugar, when it rises, not just your blood sugar that rises, there's also your insulin, which is a hormone, and that insulin affects all your other hormones. So your hormones are like a symphony. They all affect the other. And so that is why blood sugar imbalances are tied to hormone imbalances. And that's why if your blood sugar is not balanced and it's going up and down, your hormones will be going up and down too, and therefore your mood. So you're not going to be feeling emotionally stable. You're not going to be feeling in a good mood or in a level mood. So blood sugar balance is seriously important. And then I would just say, in terms of when you are eating sugary foods, what are you not eating? That's the thing. You are displacing other foods. What you're doing is you're choosing to eat foods, processed foods, because let's be honest, that's where the sugar is. It's in processed foods. You're choosing to eat foods that your body is not designed to break down and use. That is actually they're quite foreign to your body. And where you're choosing that, you are also choosing not to eat foods that you could have had. So you could have had, let's say you're having lunch and you've got a sandwich and a muffin. I'm going on about this muffin. Or you could have, a piece of protein with some potatoes and some roasted veggies or a side salad. So those are wildly different meals. But let's face it, you're not going to eat both, are you? You're not going to eat a sandwich, a muffin, a piece of chicken, a whole, some roast potatoes and some side salad and roast veg. You've got to make a choice. So if you choose the sandwich or the muffin, then that's flour, that's refined sugar in the sandwich and the muffin, and maybe a bit of cucumber or some lettuce or tomato if you're lucky. which is, it's wildly different. The other meal has, maybe 5 different types of veggie or salad ingredients, including the potatoes, which are a very good source of fiber, and natural sugar, not processed sugar, in the form of carbs. So yeah, wildly different. One your body knows how to break down and use for energy, for brain function. It contains a lot of fiber to feed the beneficial bacteria that we spoke about, so that you have the right balance between your good and bad bacteria. It's giving you a lot more nutrients. So like I said, wildly different. So when you make a choice to eat sugary foods, you're making a choice not to eat other foods, which over time is seriously detrimental because it adds up. And then I would say, I suppose you are choosing to eat foods that are processed, because processed foods contain refined sugar. That's where refined sugar is found. And when you do that, you will also be consuming other harmful ingredients. It won't just be the sugar. With the sugar in the processed food will come preservatives, sometimes E numbers, many other problematic ingredients. And lastly, the 5th point would just be weight gain, which is, I don't have an issue with anyone who is overweight. Of course, don't discriminate like that at all. But once that, all shapes and sizes are absolutely welcome. But once it becomes a health problem for the person and they're struggling and they are now in a category where they're at risk of numerous diseases and they have no energy, and so on, then that is a problem. And that is, sugar combined with fat, which is always what you get in processed foods. You get that combination of sugar or carbs with fat, is the quickest way to put on a significant amount of weight. So yeah, it's problematic. And I think that even more than that is with the weight gain, what you get is you get a feeling of never feeling satisfied, always feeling hungry, because the foods that you're eating that are sugary and processed, they don't contain any fiber. They don't contain anything that signals to your body that you are now full. And so even though you may have just eaten a packet of donuts, you're going to feel starving. You're not going to feel satisfied, because that is not what your body wanted. And that doesn't fuel your body. And therefore, you feel like you're constantly not getting enough, and you're not. You're not getting enough fiber. You're not getting enough nutrients. And so your body cues the wrong signals of hunger and fullness. And that is run by hormone. Leptin is your fullness hormone. It tells your body you're now full. And ghrelin is your hunger hormone. It tells your body you are hungry. And I always like to remember that. I remember when I was starting to become a nutritional therapist, the little ghrelin, like, feed me. to think, visualize the release of those hormones. But yeah, I would say that would be an overview of sort of the main points and the main body systems that are affected by sugar consumption. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, that is so insightful, but it sounds to me that it is just not something that we should be consuming in excess at all. But tell us how you became so passionate about this, and a little bit of a backstory. So around your passion around reducing sugar and good nutrition.
Yeah, sure. So I struggled a lot in my past with tiredness, with sudden drops in energy. Even as a teenager, I remember really struggling. I remember fainting at work before because my blood sugar was so all over the place. Often I would get up from sitting to standing and feel dizzy and seeing stars and things. I was eating a typically healthy diet, and I just couldn't understand how I, as a young person, could feel so bad. And I just couldn't get answers. I'd read every book, I'd done everything, I'd been to the doctors, I'd tried the antidepressants, which hadn't made any difference at all. And so I decided to go and study it. That's how desperate I was, to be honest. And that's how I found out that I had a thyroid condition, because I was able to advocate for myself. I knew what I needed to do to get to that point, and which test to have done, and so on, and the confidence to actually do it. And then I learned about how gut health is so tightly tied to thyroid health. And that's how I got so passionate there. And just when I changed my diet to not having any refined sugar, it was dramatic. The difference was life-changing, completely life-changing. And of course, I'm not saying it was only the sugar. Obviously, when you remove processed foods from your diet, that's huge. You are removing sugar, yes, but like I said, you're also removing a whole lot of other stuff and oils and preservatives that your body didn't want and were also causing a problem. So yeah, that's how I came through with it. And then with my 3 kids, I can see it very clearly. What I give them to eat. The way they start their day, the type of breakfast they have, the type of snacks that they have is significant in terms of their behavior and how they feel emotionally. So yeah, I think I've started to work with a lot of clients with their kids, because it's very easy to run gut microbiome tests for anybody. And on kids, it's not invasive. It's not a blood sample. It's a stool sample. So anyone can do it, even babies. And so I think that's how I got into being quite passionate about it, because I think with children, they can't advocate for themselves because they don't know what the sugar's doing to them. It's sort of touted as, oh, great, sweet, it's a treat, and end of term, let's have some sweet. Let's have some sweet. There's always sweet. The kids' menus always have, totally void of nutrients, sugary, chips, breaded stuff. It's they don't know. They need to be empowered. If they have the knowledge of what it actually happens when they eat those foods, even from a young age, I've been teaching my own kids, then they can make the choice. And yes, they might make the wrong choices for a number of years, but if you can just manage it, they will get to the point where they can make the right choice, and they do have that knowledge. So yeah, I think that's how I got into it, especially with kids. And it does really bug me how it's just sort of like, oh, sugar's fine. It's almost as if you're mean if you don't give your child sugar. And I think that really needs to change. I think there needs to be more education for the children and the parents as well.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's so insightful. So this is leading me up to this kind of misconception around that sugar is natural, that it's fine for kids and adults and all of us to have sugar. It's not so bad. It's okay for a treat. I mean, you sound quite passionate about your professional opinion around that.
Yeah, I've sort of gone into that question before you even asked me, so that's good. Yeah, I think the problem is, let me just put it straight. Set the record straight, because sugar is not natural. It absolutely isn't. Yes, it comes from a plant, from the sugarcane plant, but if it were to be natural, you would have to eat that whole sugarcane, which wouldn't be possible. So the definition of natural sugar is sugar that is naturally occurring in food, so within a food. So sugar itself is totally processed. It's refined to the point where only sugar remains from that sugar cane plant. So it is the furthest thing from natural. So just because it comes from a plant originally doesn't mean it's natural. It depends how much it's been refined. So for example, a fruit contains natural sugar, but it's almost within a safety net, because it's supplied by nature. It comes packaged with your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants, even your sometimes enzymes as well. So it comes, and obviously the fiber, which totally changes how the sugar's released. It slows the release of the sugar right down. So you don't get a really big spike in blood sugar and then that crash. So it's a totally different ballgame when you are eating natural sugar. And most kids love fruit, and there are so many different fruits. And what I do is, even though it's natural sugar, I'll still pair it with something to slow down that sugar. So, some fruit with some nuts that child might like. And it doesn't always have to be the same. You could mix it up. You could do macadamia nuts. And obviously you wouldn't do this at school because of the allergies, but at home you might, if you don't have an allergy, you might do macadamia nuts one day, Brazil nuts, pecan nuts, hazelnuts, My 7-year-old is loving toasted hazelnut at the moment, and the more variety, the more you're feeding that diverse gut microbiome as well, which fends off those pathogenic bacteria that want to come through. So, adding a fat or a protein source with the sugar will help to slow it down. And I will do that even with, like I said, natural sugar from fruit. But if you are to have refined sugar, if there isn't a way around it, if you feel that way, if your child's going to a party or something, and you don't want to be saying to them, you can't have any of that, then, because you don't want to obviously build up that resentment or a bad relationship with them, or them sort of fearing food. It's more about over time empowering them, explaining it to them, but and then giving them something that contains protein and fat right before they go to the party, so that it can help, and making sure that when they come home, they have a really great meal with lots of fiber, lots of, veggies and fruits and things, to make sure that that pathogenic bacteria that's fed by sugar is not going to overpower the good bacteria. In life, there's always good guys and bad guys, aren't they? Exactly like that in your gut. And if bad guys are allowed to get out of control, they overpower the system. But if that balance is maintained so that there's enough good guys to keep the bad guys under control, then we're good. But that takes a bit of work, and it's unfortunately, we can't just be throwing sugar at kids, because it does cause a problem within the gut. So yeah, I would say, if we go back to those 5 things that I spoke about, why sugar is a problem, if we really think about that in terms of the kids, with your question of, oh, it's okay for a treat, it's not that bad for kids. If you really think back to what we spoke about, where we discovered that, your gut affects your sleep, your brain, so your brain health, your brain development, your ability to learn, to think clearly, your mental health, your mood, this emotional state you're in, your sleep, your behavior, your eating behavior, your digestion. When we consider all of that, is it really okay to be damaging gut health by feeding sugar, if those are the things that are affected? I mean, those are integral things to a child's life and development, setting them up for their future. If they're not going to be sleeping well, not digesting well, they're going to have issues concentrating, their brain health isn't going to be good, their behavior is not going to be good, their mental health is not going to be good. That's going to be a major problem. And it's not always obvious right after they have sugar. For some kids, it is. For others, it's a cumulative effect where it's over time, it gets to the point where their gut health is then quite damaged, and it is an overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. And you can see that in young children even. I've seen overgrowth of candida in 3-year-olds. So yeah, it's I hope that sort of, I would say it's not okay. It's you can't be that mum that says no to everything either, but you've got to be strong enough to say no when you don't feel comfortable. You've got to keep sugar, I would say, out of the house. I mean, we never have a bag of sugar in our house ever. It's just not something that we have. And you've got to have alternatives like your amazing product. Or your more natural sweeteners if you're baking or something like that, and just constantly empowering and educating your child so that when they're older, they have a good relationship with food and they know what they're doing with the choices that they're making.
Yes, absolutely. We can. It's such great advice. And I think, as a mum myself, one of the things that you worry about, of course, you want to give them all the good stuff when they're at home, and you want to make sure they're not excluded when you go out. But I suppose over time, and if they're getting the majority of their nutrition at home is really wholesome, the very odd occasional birthday party a couple of times a year is not going to have thrown that gut balance out too much, as long as it's that, sort of bookended with good nutrition around that day. It's not going to throw everything out of balance. But
exactly. Yeah, if you're putting in the work, and you're constantly feeding their good bacteria, then it's much more likely that they won't have an overgrowth from like I said, the odd occasion. And then it's just about also educating them and maybe making them, realize, if you do choose to have this, you might not feel great afterwards. You might get a burst of energy and then feel really tired later, or you might get quite grumpy and find it hard to manage your emotions. And then let them choose it and then say, but you don't have to go, I told you so, but you can say, can you see sort of how that's playing out? Does it feel good? Or, you know, next time maybe we should think about it a little bit more, you know what I mean, in a kind way, so that they can actually learn over time.
That's right. That's good. And that's just a kind of enforcement of, you know, reinforcing a good behavior and guiding through, you know, behavior that maybe, you know, that we all as parents doing a bit of parenting in a gentle and, you know, enlightening way for the child. That's brilliant advice. So I think really that, you know, that you've kicked this challenge off with some really amazing food for thought, but I think it's just to get us started with the idea that sugar really isn't this benign, you know, this benign ingredient that has no consequences, that is just this natural thing that, you know, we've been using for such a long time. This is something that is refined, that we are bringing into, you know, our diets in our household and across the food industry, which is bulking out foods. Every single processed food out there has got some sugar in it. And even some of the ones that claim to be healthier, like the low-fat products, all of those full of sugar. And then we wonder, you know, it's no wonder really that we are in the international crisis around family health and nutrition that we're in. So, you know, such a great enlightening kickoff. And I hope that that's really helping people to think twice really about what they're putting into their family's health. And, you know, considering those things that we see as treats, perhaps not being such a benign thing. I think it's just, if we can just pause and think about what we're doing. And if we kick off our challenge today with just that kind of reflection, it's going to be really, really helpful. Are there any kind of other nuggets that you wanted to impart as we kick off this challenge today? Any other kind of little nuggets of gold, or any words of advice for parents just like us that are, we're all trying to get through the day, aren't we? Yeah,
definitely. I would say definitely don't demonize fruit. So I mentioned it earlier, where a lot of people go, oh, you know, we shouldn't eat too much fruit, or we shouldn't give our kids too much fruit. It's definitely a much better choice than, like you said, some of these packaged foods or snacks that are trying to make out like they're really healthy. And if you flip over the back, they are often really high in sugar. So rather go for a massive platter of all different types of fruits: watermelon, grapes, 2 types of nectarine, peaches, you know, mango, apples, kiwi fruit. A kiwi fruit contains 100% of your vitamin C, for example, for the entire day. Watermelon contains 90% water, which is brilliant for hydration, which translates to energy and clarity. So, you know, they have a lot of benefits, and the sugar in them is not to be feared, because it is natural sugar and it is packaged within that fibrous, vitamin and mineral rich sort of package. So what I would say though is definitely use a little parent hack, where you then serve with that something to slow down that sugar release. So some nuts, or some cold meats, or some chicken, or some whatever other protein or fat source you want to serve. If you have dairy, some cheese or vegan cheese, you know, so like a sort of serving out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, crackers with guacamole maybe, and then those fruits, and just keeping it as natural as possible. And the thing is, when you're reducing sugar, it doesn't have to be like, right, we're not having any more sugar. That's never going to work for a child. What you need to do is to go slowly and slowly reduce it, whilst empowering them and teaching them, and their taste buds will change. That's the thing, over time, so that it doesn't have to be such a horrible experience. If you give them time, their taste buds do change, and they don't crave such sweet taste. So it just depends where you're at, and just doing that gradual, having that gradual process, empowering them and teaching them as much as you can, using fat and protein, especially like the before a party as well, and a really good fiber-rich meal afterwards. Just using every opportunity to feed the good bacteria, so that like you know, where like you said, the few parties here and there are not going to be able to overthrow the whole system. And just remembering that, you know, their immune system is in their gut, it's inside their gut, 75% of the immune system or more. So, you know, you're looking after their immune system as well when you're feeding their gut bacteria. Just go as natural as possible. Go for foods that are natural, whole foods that come from the earth or from the ground that haven't been tampered with. Those are the foods that our bodies know how to use. So I think that's everything.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for kicking us off on with this, this challenge that we're going to be helping families to use these 5 days this week to just, consider getting rid of sugar. And that doesn't have to be this really difficult and impossible task. It can be these incremental and really clever, like little hacks that you can do through the day. And before you know it, you're just thinking, well, I haven't had sugar for a week. I haven't had sugar for 2 weeks. I haven't had sugar. Well, I barely have any sugar. I only had one thing when I went out once in this month. And the benefits to the health are just so fantastic. So thank you so much, Georgia. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. And I'm so sure that this is going to be encouraging people to get sugar-free and to use this challenge to get rid of sugar, because you know what, we don't need sugar anymore. I really don't think there are so many options for us now to be able to live a sugar-free life. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.